Today we're jumping into Dune Awakening because I wanted to talk about the base raiding that happens inside of the deep desert. I'll have some footage in the background where we managed to actually break into a base. It was more so like a guild's ornithopter refuel station that we broke into. But regardless, we managed to get a little bit of a taste of what it's like to attempt to raid a base inside of Dune Awakening. So now I want to jump in and give you guys my thoughts. Essentially, breaking into a base was surprisingly easy. As a solo, I was fully anticipating not being able to break even one single wall. You can see here I'm kind of like messing around with the cutter ray and different weapons to see what's doing damage on what. And when we finally landed on the cope pistol, we absolutely started burning through these walls, which took me for surprise because typically inside of base raiding games, you need some sort of explosive in order to actually break into a wall. However, inside of Dune Awakening, it fully seems that any and all sorts of damage are going to be output onto that structure, which is a bit intimidating and definitely makes base raiding easier inside of Dune Awakening than in, say, Rust. However, there's a bit of a catch to that because the only times you can actually even raid a base are immediately after a sandstorm swipes over it. And even then, you only have like a 6-minute or so time window to cause damage to anything inside of that base. You can actually work around this a little bit. If you manage to find the sub-fief and take that down, you essentially render the base useless. It's no longer being protected by the sub-fief. You could then therefore, put your own sub-fief down or just continue to break through the chest and loot the base. Like I said, the base that we raided here isn't as technically a base, I wouldn't call it. It's more so like a ornithopter refuel and restock on rocket station. However, we did manage to break through not only the wall, but several of the chests before the timer ran out, and we were only using the cope pistol. Don't get me wrong here, the cope pistol outputs a ridiculous amount of damage. However, it is at the end of the day just a weapon. So I was surprised that my regular weapon was able to so easily tear through this wall. If I hadn't been messing around right at the beginning with the cutter ray and whatnot, I'd imagine that I would have been able to break 2 or 3 walls even, and that's just as a solo with a regular old weapon, not even really truly attempting to be breaking into the base. Imagine now you have a whole guild of people who happen to all have the cope weapon. They're going to be able to break the entirety of your base in the matter of the 6 minutes that they have to do so, which is kind of the point that I'm trying to make in this video, is that raiding inside of Dune Awakening is surprisingly simple. And because of that, there are a couple of things that I think you should take note of if you are planning on building out into the deep desert, especially as like a solo or a small group. It would definitely be incredibly beneficial to almost adapt a Rust style of honeycomb base in order to more protect your walls. Another thing you really should be doing is hiding your sub-fief, making sure it is just not anywhere that is easily found. You can see in the base that I was raiding, I wasn't particularly concerned with finding the sub-fief because of how open the base was. I just kind of wanted to see what was in the chests, and I was honestly surprised that I had even broken into this base. But you can also see that you can't see the sub-fief in any of these clips, and I'm guessing that's because these guys have it implanted somewhere in between foundations or something like that. This is going to make it to where anybody who does raid the base only is going to have 6 minutes to break items. They're not going to be able to, or they're going to have a harder time finding the actual sub-fief and taking control of the base. Honestly, I have a little bit of mixed feelings about how easy raiding is inside of Dune Awakening. As a mainly solo player, I really actually like the fact that I have the ability to break into a base with just a weapon. However, on the flip side of that, guilds and zergs now have the ability to absolutely demolish a base with just regular weapons, and let alone if they manage to whip out some actual explosives, which is what you would expect is needed to raid a base. I think it's because of Dune Awakening's whole base shield system that only gets knocked down by these storms and only for a small period of time is why they allow just the regular weapons to be causing the damage. The point still stands. It's actually incredibly easy to bust into bases inside of the deep desert. So builder beware. And we haven't even mentioned any of the exploits that are going around, because there are a lot of exploits and certain game mechanics that are allowing people to rapidly break into bases. It'll be interesting to see how this whole system evolves throughout the Dune development cycle here. Be sure to let me know what you guys think down in the comments. We play Dune Awakening amongst other games live right here on YouTube as well as on Twitch, and we're about to shift into our main streaming schedule, which is going to be Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I'll have a link to the Twitch down in the description. Be sure to go drop a follow if you're interested in that. Comment made it down below if you managed to make it this far into the video so I can give you an extra shout out. But other than that, I hope you guys all have an amazing day. I'm out.